The Seine breathes through the city tonight, a deep, slow current that has carried Paris from its first wooden hut to its final lamp. You stand at the water's edge and feel the cool air rise, smelling of mud and stone. For 1,000 years this river has been the city's heartbeat, its shield and its only true clock. As the last light fades, you're about to walk into the quiet lives that were built, day by day, along its banks. We will cross centuries by the sounds that kept people awake, the clatter of coins, the scratch of a quill, the soft thud of a barred door, the distant drum of fear. Yet through all the noise of the day, the river always returned to its own steady hush. Tonight, you join that quiet. You will feel the weight of the day lift as you step into the past, guided by the simple, constant need for rest. Every sleep is earned, and every night holds the memory of the day that came before. Let the river carry you now, past the noise, past the worry, and into the deep, soft quiet of a Paris that sleeps. Before we settle in, if you enjoy these relaxing journeys into the past, like the video and subscribe for more quiet history evenings. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now let's get comfortable and ease into tonight's journey. You stand on the Ile de la Cité as darkness settles over the small town, clustered between river and woods. This isn't the Paris you know. It's barely more than a village pressed onto an island. Timber houses leaning close together, their roofs thick with reed and straw. Beyond the water, forests stretch into shadows, where raiders might move unseen. The grain is tucked under benches tonight, and fear is kept quiet, shared only in glances and the careful way doors are barred. Your hand drops the heavy wooden bar across a timber door. The bar is rough oak, worn smooth, where countless hands have lifted it into place. The door itself is thick planks bound with iron, built to hold against whatever the night might bring. Inside, the room smells of damp wool and peat smoke. You share coarse rye bread with your family, the crust hard between your teeth, the taste earthy and filling. Each bite is counted, each crumb precious. Outside, you hear footsteps on wet planks. The wooden walkways that connect the island's buildings are slick with river mist, treacherous in the dark. Someone moves carefully, testing each step. You listen until the sound fades, then check the ferry rope one more time. It's tied tight to its post, the knot checked twice because a loose rope could mean no escape if danger comes by water. Sleep comes lightly on straw tonight. Your bed is a thick mat of dried rushes, soft enough to cushion your bones, but thin enough that you feel every movement of the family pressed close around you. One ember is nursed in the hearth, glowing dull red in the darkness. It's not enough for warmth, but enough to catch flame quickly if needed. Near your bed, small relics rest on a wooden shelf. A piece of carved bone, a scrap of blessed cloth. They're meant to soften the river voices that whisper through gaps in the walls. The baker guards his sack of grain like treasure. You see him through a crack in the shutters, hunched over burlap that holds perhaps a week's worth of flour. His hands move constantly, checking the knots, feeling for dampness, listening for the scratch of rats. A single sack spoiled could mean hunger for his family and anyone who depends on his bread. He'll sleep beside it tonight, one hand resting on the rough fabric. A child is nested near the embers, small body curled tight under a wool cloak. The wool is coarse and smells of sheep, but it holds warmth better than linen. The child's breathing is soft and steady, trusting in the adults who sit awake, listening, Children learn early here that night belongs to the watchers, that sleep is a gift given by those who stay alert. Down by the water, a boatman ties knots by feel alone. His fingers know the rope's texture, the way hemp fibres twist under pressure. Each knot must hold against current and weather, against the pull of a boat loaded with people fleeing danger. He works in darkness because light would mark his position, make him visible to anyone watching from the far shore. The air is thick with peat smoke tonight. Peat burns slow and steady, giving off a sweet, earthy smell that clings to everything. Clothes, hair, the wooden walls themselves. It's not the clean scent of wood smoke, but something deeper, older, like the earth itself burning. Damp wool adds its own smell, the wet sheep scent of cloaks and blankets that never quite dry in this river air. Wax-thick candles burn in the richer houses, their flames steady and bright. But most families make do with rushlights, dried reeds dipped in fat, burning with a flickering, smoky flame. The light is poor, barely enough to see faces across a small room, but it's light enough for the work that must be done after dark. Mending clothes, checking food stores, and counting the day's small earnings. The curfew bell rings from the church, its bronze voice carrying across water and wood. Inside timber rooms, families pause their quiet conversations to listen. The bell means safety for some time to bar doors and settle into protected sleep. But it also means danger for anyone caught outside, anyone who might be moving with purposes the community doesn't trust. As the night deepens, you feel the island's smallness. Water surrounds you, dark and moving. The forests beyond are full of sounds, wind in leaves, animals moving, perhaps other sounds that could be human. This place feels both protected and trapped, safe because it's surrounded by water, vulnerable because there's nowhere to run if that water brings enemies instead of safety. The day's work settles into your bones now. Hours of hauling water, grinding grain, mending nets, tending animals. Your hands are rough from rope and wood. Your back aches from bending over tasks that never end. The straw beneath you feels soft after standing all day on stone and timber. Your muscles release their tension slowly, letting the island hold your weight. Trade will grow in the years ahead. These wooden planks will harden into stone bridges lined with booths and stalls. But tonight, the island sleeps small and quiet, trusting in thick doors and careful listening to carry it through until dawn. You cross the packed planks of the Pont au Change as evening settles over medieval Paris. The bridge clatters beneath your feet, heavy with the weight of stalls and booths that line both sides. What was once a simple timber crossing has become a marketplace suspended over water. Money changers count coins in cramped spaces, their scales glinting in lamplight. Merchants pull shutters closed over displays of cloth and spices. The bridge itself groans under the load of commerce, but it holds, as it has for decades of trade. Theft fears rise with the darkness. You watch a silversmith lock his strongbox twice, testing the mechanism with careful fingers. Coins are counted not once, but twice before being tucked away. A woman selling bread marks each loaf with her thumb before covering the basket with a thick cloth. Trust becomes precious after sunset. What flows freely in daylight, conversation, commerce, the easy exchange of goods, grows cautious when shadows fall. The watchmen begin their rounds, calling the hour in voices that carry across water. 10 of the clock and all's well echoes between stone walls and timber stalls. Their lanterns bob like fireflies along the bridge's length. You hear the thud of their wooden clogs on the planks, a steady rhythm that marks safety for those who sleep nearby. Each call means another hour passed without incident, another small victory against the darkness. Shutters will closed along the bridge with sharp wooden snaps. Behind each one, a family or merchant settles into the cramped space above their stall. These aren't proper houses, but rooms carved from the bridge's structure, narrow and low-ceilinged, smelling of river mist and whatever goods are stored below. A baker's family sleeps above flour sacks. A cloth merchant's children curl up between bolts of wool. The bridge becomes a vertical village after dark. Your own bed tonight is shared by a shift. The space is too valuable, the room's too small for luxury. While you rest, another family member tends the stall below, watching for thieves or late customers. Sleep comes in careful portions, 4 hours for you, then 4 for your brother, then 4 for your father. The bed never grows cold because someone always needs it. Bread carries stamps and marks now, each baker's sign pressed into the crust. You run your thumb over the pattern, feeling the ridges that mark this loaf as coming from the stall 3 booths down. It's not decoration, but necessity, a way to track quality, to know who baked what, to assign blame if the bread is short weight or poorly made. The marks are like signatures written in flour and fire. Trust rests on latches and a neighbour's ear tonight. Your door has 3 separate locks, each one a barrier against the desperate and dishonest. But more important than iron is the knowledge that the silversmith next door listens for trouble, that the cloth merchant's wife watches your stall when you step away. The bridge community survives because everyone understands that a theft from one threatens all. A money changer ties his leather pouch with elaborate knots, each twist and loop memorized. His fingers work without looking, muscle memory guiding the rope through patterns that would take a thief precious minutes to unravel. The delay might be enough to raise an alarm, to bring neighbours running. In the morning he'll untie the same knots with practised ease, but tonight they're barriers against loss. Washerwomen work by moonlight at the river's edge below. You hear the slap of wet cloth against stone, the splash of rinse water thrown back into the Seine. They work in groups for safety, voices low but constant, keeping each other company through the dangerous hours. Their hands are red from cold water and harsh soap, but the work pays better at night when fewer people compete for space at the washing stones. A dog noses through scraps near the fishmonger's stall, its wet nose finding fragments of value in what humans discard. The dog belongs to no one and everyone, fed by whoever has scraps to spare, sleeping wherever it finds warmth. It serves as an early warning system. Its growl or bark is often the first sign of strangers approaching in the dark. Tallow smoke rises from cheap candles, thick and greasy, mixing with the cleaner scent of beeswax from wealthier stalls. The smoke creates layers in the still air, marking the bridge's economy in scent alone. Below, guttering flames reflect off the Seine's dark surface, doubling the light, but also doubling the shadows that dance between the bridge's supports. The river breath moves between the piles that hold up the bridge, carrying dampness and the smell of things that grow in water, weeds and fish, mud and decay. It's not unpleasant, just constant, a reminder that this marketplace exists suspended over a living river that never stops moving. The wood of the bridge itself is damp from this constant moisture, soft enough that nails work loose and must be hammered tight again each season. Damp wood creaks and settles, as the night grows cold. The bridge contracts slightly, joints shifting with small groans and sighs. You learn to sleep through these sounds, to distinguish between the normal settling of timber and the footsteps that might mean danger. Each creak has its own voice, its own meaning in the vocabulary of night sounds. As dawn approaches, you hear the early stirrings of commerce. A baker kneads dough in the darkness, preparing for the day's first customers. Coins clink as merchants count yesterday's earnings and plan today's purchases. The bridge never truly sleeps, it only dims its activity, waiting for light to bring back the full rush of trade. You climb the narrow stone steps to a garret in the Latin Quarter, your breath visible in the cold air. Parchment costs more than a week's meals here, each sheet precious as silver. Oil for lamps burns through coins faster than you can earn them. So you work by the smallest flame possible, hunched close to catch every flicker of light. The university curfew rings strict and early. Students caught wandering after the bell face fines they can't afford, or worse, expulsion from the only path that might lift them from poverty. Your fingers are stained black with ink as you copy lines from a borrowed manuscript. The quill scratches against rough parchment, each letter formed with care because a mistake means starting over on expensive material you can't waste. The words are Latin theology, philosophy, law, knowledge that feels distant from the growling of your empty stomach, but might someday mean a position in the church or a noble household. Your hand cramps from the careful work, but you push through because daylight hours are for earning bread money, and night is the only time for learning. Below in the tavern, you share thin onion soup with other students, the broth stretched with water until it's barely more than flavoured liquid. The innkeeper ladles it carefully, each bowl measured to make the pot last. You tear your bread into small pieces, making it seem like more, chewing slowly to fool your stomach into feeling full. Around the table, conversations mix French and Latin, young voices debating questions that feel enormous in this small room, but might mean nothing beyond these walls. You listen for patrols through the shuttered window. The university watch moves through the quarter's twisted streets, looking for students breaking curfew, or citizens avoiding the night taxes that fund the city's protection. Their footsteps echo off stone walls, leather boots on cobblestones creating a rhythm you learn to recognise. When the sounds fade, you return to your copying, but one ear stays alert for their return. Your quills dry near the embers of a small fire, their tips hardened and ready for tomorrow's work. You cut each one carefully with a sharp knife, testing the point against your thumb. A good quill might last a week if you're careful, a poor one only a day or two. The goose feathers come from the market when you can afford them, from dead birds found along the Seine when you can't. Either way, they're tools as essential as food. Knowledge here is traded for shelter as much as coin. You teach a merchant's son his letters in exchange for a corner of this garret, sleeping on straw that's changed when it starts to smell too strong. Your fingers, permanently stained with ink, mark you as someone who can read and write, skills rare enough to have value even when your purse is empty. The merchant gets his son educated. You get a roof, and both of you pretend the arrangement is about more than survival. Your pallet in the garret is thin straw, covered with a coarse blanket that scratches against your skin. The room is barely wide enough for two people to lie down. The ceiling so low you can't stand straight near the walls. But it's yours from midnight to dawn, a space where you can spread out your borrowed books and practice writing by candlelight. The straw rustles when you turn, a sound that becomes comforting after weeks of sleeping on it. A scribe warms his hands over a brazier in the scriptorium below, fingers too stiff from cold to hold a pen properly. He flexes them slowly, working feeling back into joints cramped from hours of careful lettering. The scriptorium stays open late for students who pay extra for the privilege of copying in a heated space, but most nights you can't afford the fee and work in your cold garret instead. The innkeeper stretches his pot au feu with whatever vegetables he can find cheap at the market's end: turnips, onions, scraps of cabbage. The stew is thin but warm, and he serves it with day-old bread that soaks up the broth. Students gather around his table like family, sharing what little they have, trading lessons for meals, creating community from necessity. A student barters a gloss, his handwritten notes explaining a difficult text, for bread from a baker who wants his daughter to read. The notes represent hours of work, careful study, and understanding hard-won through repetition and thought. But hunger is immediate, and knowledge can't fill an empty stomach. The trade is fair, wisdom for sustenance, each party getting what they need most. Wet slate roofs glisten in the lamplight, rain running down in steady streams that splash into the narrow streets below. The Latin Quarter's buildings lean close together, their upper stories almost touching across the alleys. Water drips constantly from eave to eave, creating a percussion that mingles with the scratch of quills and the murmur of late-night study. Bell schedules rule your life here. Matins, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, compline. Each bell marks not just prayer time, but study periods, meal times, and curfew warnings. You learn to measure your day in bronze voices calling across stone, your work planned around the rhythm of religious observance that governs the university's life. Echoing cloisters carry sound strangely at night. A whispered conversation in one corner can be heard clearly 3 arches away, while a normal voice seems muffled and distant. Students learn to modulate their speech, to keep secrets in libraries where stone walls have ears, to find corners where private words stay private. Rain on stone stairs creates treacherous footing as you climb to your garret. Each step is slick with water and moss, worn smooth by decades of students' feet. You climb carefully, one hand on the wall for balance, books wrapped in oiled cloth to protect them from the weather that seeps through every gap in the old stone. The day's copying work settles into your shoulders now, hours bent over parchment, muscles tight from maintaining the careful posture needed for clean lettering. Your eyes ache from straining to see by poor light, but your mind feels full of the words you've copied, knowledge seeping in through repetition, even when understanding comes slowly. Plague bells will soon bend the breath of this learning city, and hunger will train even softer footsteps on these stone stairs. You step into a Paris where bread has become scarce as gold, where queues form before dawn for loaves that may not exist. The Black Death has passed through like a scythe, leaving gaps in every household, and now famine follows in its wake. Eyes are kept small, and words smaller still, because to show want is to invite theft, and to speak of hunger is to make it real. Fear of sickness lingers in every breath, every touch, every shared cup that might carry death from lip to lip. Your hands shake slightly as you hide a small loaf under linen in a wooden chest. The bread is dark and coarse, made from rye mixed with ground acorns, and whatever grain could be found. It's precious beyond its weight. This single loaf might mean the difference between your children waking tomorrow or sleeping too long. You press the linen smooth, erasing any sign of the treasure beneath. The chest looks ordinary, unremarkable, exactly as it must. The vinegar wash waits by your door, sharp and stinging. You dip a cloth into the sour liquid and wipe down the door frame, the latch, and anywhere hands might touch. The physicians say vinegar drives away the bad air that carries plague, though you've seen it fail as often as succeed. Still, the ritual brings comfort, something to do with your fear, a way to fight back against the invisible enemy that took your neighbour last month and your sister's husband the month before. Small icons rest by your bed tonight, carved wood and painted clay figures that cost precious coins but feel necessary. Saint Sebastian with his arrows, protector against plague. Saint Lawrence with his gridiron, guardian of the poor. The Virgin with her gentle hands, mother to all who suffer. They're arranged carefully on a shelf your husband built, their painted eyes watching over your sleep, their presence a whisper of hope in rooms grown too quiet. Sleep comes in turns now because someone must always listen. Your husband takes the first watch, sitting by the shuttered window with a knife across his knees. Not for bandits, they rarely venture into neighbourhoods where death has been so frequent, but for the desperate, the hungry, those who might smell your hidden bread and decide their need is greater than your precautions. At midnight, you'll wake and take your turn while he rests. Whispers fill the indoor air like smoke. Conversations that once rang clear across courtyards now huddle close to hearths, shared between cupped hands and lowered heads. You hear fragments through thin walls. Who has grain, who has sickness, who was seen coughing at the well. Information travels in murmurs because knowledge of food or fever can mean life or death, and both must be guarded carefully. Stores are guarded like prayers, each handful of grain counted and recounted. You know exactly how many meals remain in your hidden sacks. 8 days of thin porridge if you stretch it with water. 5 days of proper nourishment if you don't. The mathematics of survival has become as familiar as breathing. Every crumb saved is another hour of life purchased against the uncertainty ahead. A candle stub changes hands for a handful of grain in the alley behind the baker's shop. The woman offering the trade has children with hollow cheeks and eyes too large for their faces. The grain seller hesitates. Candles mean light for work, warmth for fingers, the ability to see danger coming. But grain means another day of life, and life trumps all other needs. The exchange happens quickly, hands moving in practiced secrecy. You watch a boy cough into his sleeve, the sound wet and rattling. His mother pulls him closer, her face tight with the fear every parent knows. Is this just winter's chill, or the beginning of something worse? The boy's cough echoes in the small room, each bark a question mark hanging in the stale air. His mother counts the coins in her purse, calculating how much a physician might cost, whether they could afford the cure if one exists. A mother sits at her table, counting crusts like a miser counts gold. Each piece of bread is examined, weighed in her palm, and sorted by size and freshness. The largest pieces go to her husband, who must work to earn what little money comes into the house. The middle pieces to her older children, who help with chores and can understand why portions are small. The smallest pieces she keeps for herself, though hunger gnaws at her belly with sharp teeth. The gravedigger eats his broth alone, sitting apart from others in the tavern. His work marks him as necessary, but dangerous. He handles the bodies that carried plague, digs the pits that hold the victims. People need him but fear him, pay him but avoid him. His broth is thin but hot, seasoned with thyme and salt when he can afford it. He eats slowly, savouring each spoonful, because meals are solitary affairs when death is your daily companion. Sour steam rises from pots where turnips and cabbage boil with scraps of meat too small to see. The smell is sharp and unappetizing, but it's food, and food is life. Families gather around these pots like altars, ladling out portions with reverence usually reserved for communion wine. The steam fogs the windows, creating a barrier between the warm interior and the cold, hungry world outside. Thyme grows wild in abandoned gardens, and you gather it secretly by moonlight. The herb helps mask the taste of spoiled grain, adds the illusion of richness to thin soups. Your fingers work quickly, stripping leaves from stems, filling a small pouch with the precious seasoning. Time costs nothing but time and courage, yet it transforms meals from mere survival into something approaching comfort. Shutter slivers let in threads of light that fall across floors like golden coins. You adjust the shutters carefully, creating gaps wide enough to see approaching danger, but narrow enough to hide the candlelight within. The light that escapes draws attention you can't afford, from thieves, from tax collectors, from neighbours whose desperation might overcome their conscience. The tolling never stops now. Church bells ring for the dead, so frequently they become background noise, a constant bronze voice counting losses. You learn to distinguish between the bells, this one for a child, that one for an adult, the slow, heavy tolling that marks another priest taken by the plague. The sound becomes the city's heartbeat, irregular and increasingly faint. As you finally lie down on straw that smells of herbs meant to ward off sickness, your body carries the day's weight of constant vigilance. Every muscle holds tension from watching, listening, and guarding. Your stomach aches with hunger, carefully ignored. Your throat burns from vinegar vapours, and your hands are rough from washing with harsh soap. But you're alive, your children breathe beside you, and tomorrow's bread waits hidden beneath clean linen. Kings will soon widen these streets, and courts will glow while alleys like yours hold to their careful darkness. You queue at a bakery as the sun sets over early modern Paris, watching the lamplighter move down the street with his ladder and oil. The city has grown beyond its medieval walls now, spreading into neighbourhoods where royal splendour brushes against the daily grind of common life. Police lanterns begin to flicker on corners, their light reflecting off wet cobblestones. Guild rules govern everything: when bread can be baked, how much it should cost, and what hours the ovens may burn. Your place in line was earned by rising before dawn, because bread waits for no one, and the baker's schedule is set by law as much as tradition. Coach wheels rattle past on the widened streets, carrying nobles between palaces that glow with hundreds of candles. You catch glimpses through carriage windows, silk and velvet, powdered faces, hands that have never kneaded dough or scrubbed floors. The contrast feels sharp tonight. While courts blaze with light until dawn, your own evening will be measured in careful spoonfuls of oil, each flame rationed against the cost of tomorrow's fuel. Watchmen move through the quarter with their reverbers, the new oil lanterns that cast pools of steady light along the main thoroughfares. You hear their calls echoing off stone walls, 9 of the clock and fair weather. The lanterns are a marvel, brighter and cleaner than the old torches, but they only light the streets where merchants and nobles walk. Your own narrow lane will remain dark, lit only by whatever candle you can afford to burn past supper. Wine casks sweat in the cellars beneath your feet, their wooden staves dark with moisture. The tavern keeper rolls them carefully across stone floors, checking the iron hoops that hold them together. Wine flows more freely now than it did in the plague years, but it's still precious enough to guard. The cellars stay cool even in summer, carved deep into the earth beneath buildings that have stood for generations. Nights stretch later now than they did in your grandmother's time. The cabarets hum with conversation until well past midnight, voices mixing French with the Latin that still marks educated speech. Musicians tune their instruments in back rooms, preparing for evenings that won't begin until most working families are already asleep. The city's rhythm has shifted. The wealthy stay awake later, sleep, live by schedules that ignore the sun's natural pattern. Your own bed folds into a corner when the last customer leaves the shop below. The room serves triple duty, workshop by day, dining space in the evening, sleeping chamber after the shutters close. You pull the thin mattress from its hiding place, spread it carefully on boards worn smooth by years of use. The space is narrow, barely wide enough for two bodies, but it's yours from midnight until dawn, and that ownership feels precious in a city where every room costs more each year. A lamplighter trims his wick with practiced fingers, adjusting the flame until it burns steady and bright. His ladder leans against a stone wall, its wooden rungs polished by countless climbs. Each lantern requires attention, oil checked, wick trimmed, glass cleaned of soot and rain. The work never ends because the city's appetite for light grows stronger each year, pushing back the darkness that once claimed every street after sunset. A seamstress eases her sore fingers in a bowl of warm water, flexing joints cramped from hours of fine stitching. Her work table holds silk thread in colours that catch lamplight like jewels. Gold, deep blue, crimson that glows like wine. The fabric she sews will dress ladies at court, but her own dress is wool, practical and plain. Her fingers tell the story of her days, pricked by needles, stained with dyes, shaped by work that pays well, but demands precision no machine can match. A porter shifts late parcels in the warehouse district, his shoulders broad from years of lifting and carrying. Goods flow into Paris faster now, spices from distant ports, cloth from northern mills, books printed in workshops that run day and night. The parcels bear wax seals and careful addresses, each one representing commerce that connects this city to places most residents will never see. The porter handles them with care, knowing that damaged goods mean angry merchants and lost wages. Roasted chestnuts fill the air with their warm, sweet scent. Street vendors tend their braziers carefully, turning the nuts with long-handled spoons to prevent burning. The smell draws customers from blocks away, workers heading home, students with a few coins to spare, children who beg their parents for the treat. The chestnuts are hot enough to warm cold hands, sweet enough to satisfy hunger, and cheap enough for common purses. A violin sings in a back room where musicians gather after their official performances end. The melody is simple but haunting, fingers finding notes that speak of longing and loss. Other instruments join, a flute, a small drum, voices humming in harmony. This music isn't for nobles or paying customers, but for the musicians themselves, playing because the day's work is done, and music is what remains when everything else falls away. Lantern glass fogs with breath and moisture, creating halos around each flame. You wipe the condensation away with your sleeve, clearing the view to the street beyond. The glass is expensive to replace, so you handle it carefully, knowing that a cracked pane means cold air and guttering flames. Through the clear glass, the street looks different, softer, more forgiving than it appears in harsh daylight. Wet cobbles reflect the lantern light, doubling the illumination and creating patterns that shift with every footstep. The stones are uneven, worn smooth in some places, cracked and broken in others. Water pools in the low spots, creating mirrors that fragment the light into dancing shapes. Walking these streets requires attention. A misplaced step could mean a twisted ankle or a fall into muddy water. The day's work moves with you into sleep now. The weight of parcels carried, the strain of fine stitching, the heat of the brazier against your face. Your body holds the memory of cobblestones beneath your feet, the sound of coach wheels on stone, the scent of chestnuts and wine and oil smoke. You close your eyes and let the narrow night embrace you, knowing that tomorrow will bring the same careful balance between survival and the growing spectacle of a city learning to glow. Pamphlets will soon pass hand to hand in these same streets, and prices will climb until paper itself tightens around the night like a fist. You whisper at a doorway in revolutionary Paris, your voice barely audible above the distant rumble of carts moving toward the scaffold square. The bread price has tripled in a month, and rage burns in every household like a fever that won't break. Patrols move through the streets with new authority, their boots sharp against cobblestones, searching for enemies of the revolution that seem to multiply with each passing night. Lists of names travel by candlelight from hand to hand, some marking heroes, others marking the condemned. Suspicion has become the city's new currency, more valuable and dangerous than the assignats that lose worth with each sunrise. Your fingers tremble as you fold a leaflet into your coat, the paper still damp with ink that speaks of liberty and death in equal measure. The words are bold, calls for justice, demands for bread, promises of a new world built on the bones of the old. But possessing such papers after curfew could mean your name on tomorrow's list, your neck under tomorrow's blade. The leaflet burns against your ribs like a coal, its message both hope and condemnation pressed into cheap paper and dangerous ideas. Carts rattle through the streets at all hours now, their wheels grinding against stones, worn smooth by centuries of traffic. You know their destination without looking, the Place de la Révolution, where the scaffold waits with its gleaming blade. The sound never stops, a percussion that marks time better than any church bell. Each rumble carries its cargo of fear, and you count the intervals between them, wondering if the pace is quickening or if terror has simply taught you to hear what was always there. Your candle burns lower as you work by its failing light, melting wax pooling on the wooden table. Candles cost more now. Everything costs more, but darkness feels dangerous when papers must be hidden and plans must be made. The flame gutters in draughts that seep through shutters, casting shadows that dance like the ghosts of guillotined nobles. You trim the wick carefully with a knife, coaxing a few more hours of light from the precious tallow. Onions are shared between families now, their sharp sweetness stretched into soups that taste more of hope than sustenance. You peel the papery skin with careful fingers, saving even the outer layers for broths that might carry flavour if not nutrition. The onion's bite brings tears that could be from hunger or grief. In these times, both feel the same. Your neighbour contributes a carrot, and another adds a bone with scraps of meat still clinging to it. Together, you create meals from nothing, community from desperation. Drums break your sleep and leave echoes in your dreams. The revolutionary rhythm that calls citizens to assembly, to celebration, to execution. The beat is martial and merciless, designed to stir blood and silence doubt. Children learn to march to its cadence, their small feet keeping time with a revolution that devours its own children. Even in sleep you hear it, the steady pulse of change that promises everything and delivers mostly death. A cooper works by candlelight, sewing coins into the hem of his coat with thread pulled from an old shirt. Gold and silver have become contraband, their possession marking you as an enemy of equality, but their absence marking you as prey to starvation. His needle moves carefully through the thick fabric, each stitch a small act of rebellion against a revolution that has made survival itself a crime. The coins press against his legs when he walks, a secret weight that could save his family or damn them all. You watch a widow, through her window, her silhouette moving across plaster walls as shadows dance in the candlelight. She counts something, coins perhaps, or ration cards, or the days since her husband's name appeared on a list. Her movements are careful, economical, shaped by the knowledge that everything she owns might be seized, everything she says might be reported, and everyone she trusts might betray her for a loaf of bread or a moment's safety. Tricolour cockades bloom on every coat and hat, the revolutionary colours that mark loyalty or disguise its absence. You adjust yours carefully before stepping into the street, making sure the red, white and blue ribbon sits prominently on your lapel. The cockade is your passport through checkpoints, your shield against suspicion, your lie made visible. Without it, you're an enemy. With it, you're merely a citizen, under surveillance. Damp cobbles gleam with more than rain tonight. They're slick with the fear that seeps from every doorway. You walk carefully, not just to avoid slipping, but to avoid the appearance of haste that might suggest guilt. Every step is measured, every pause calculated. The stones have witnessed centuries of Paris history, but nothing like this, a city turning on itself, devouring its past with mechanical precision. Steel scrapes against steel in the distance, the sound of the guillotine being prepared for another day's work. The blade slides down its track with a whisper that carries across the night air, a sound that makes your spine stiffen and your pace quicken despite your caution. The machine has become the revolution's most honest voice, direct, efficient, final. It speaks a language everyone understands, regardless of their politics or their prayers. The drums fade down the boulevards, their echoes bouncing off buildings that have stood since kings ruled from palaces, now turned into symbols of oppression. The sound grows distant, but never disappears entirely, as if the revolution itself has a heartbeat that pulses through the city's arteries. You listen until silence returns, knowing it's temporary. The drums will sound again tomorrow, and the carts will roll, and the blade will fall. You close your eyes and let the day's tension drain from your shoulders, the weight of hidden papers, the strain of watched words, the exhaustion of constant vigilance. Your body holds the revolution's rhythm now, muscles tight with the knowledge that survival depends on perfect performance in a play where the script changes daily and the penalty for forgetting your lines is death. Soon the turmoil will settle into different patterns. Gas jets will hiss with steadier light, and straight boulevards will split the darkness with geometric precision. You walk beneath the new gas lamps that line Baron Haussmann's boulevards, their steady flames casting pools of yellow light on wet pavement. The old Paris is being torn down around you, narrow medieval streets replaced by wide avenues that stretch in perfect lines toward monuments and squares. Your own neighbourhood disappeared 6 months ago, swallowed by the Baron's vision of a modern city. The displacement has pushed rents higher, forcing families into smaller rooms. But tonight the gaslight feels like progress made visible, steady and bright, where oil lamps once flickered and failed. Cafe tables crowd the new sidewalks, their marble tops gleaming under the lamplight. You pass clusters of men in dark coats reading newspapers, their voices mixing French with the occasional German or English phrase. The cafes stay open later now, their windows glowing like jewels along the boulevards. Inside, zinc bars shine with polish, reflecting bottles of wine and absinthe arranged like soldiers in formation. The green fairy has become the evening's companion for those who can afford her bitter embrace. Newsboys call headlines from street corners, their voices cutting through the rumble of omnibuses and the clip of horses' hooves on new stone. Latest from the Crimea Emperor's speech, stock prices. The papers they sell carry stories from across Europe, news that travels by telegraph faster than any messenger could ride. You buy a copy with coins that feel lighter than they should, the francs' value shifting with political winds you can't predict or control. The boulevards have pushed spectacle into daily life in ways that feel both wonderful and exhausting. You watch a woman in silk gloves step from a carriage, her dress catching gaslight like captured stars. Behind her, a street sweeper in patched wool pushes debris into gutters designed by engineers who calculated the flow of water with mathematical precision. The contrast between wealth and work has always existed, but Haussmann's straight lines make it impossible to ignore. Your own meals have moved later to match the city's new rhythm. Where once you ate supper at sunset, now you dine at 8 or 9. The gas lamps making evening feel endless. The cafes serve food until midnight, plates of charcuterie, bowls of soup, bread that's whiter and softer than your grandmother ever tasted. The abundance feels artificial sometimes, as if the city is performing prosperity rather than living it. Bedrooms have been pulled inward for quiet as the streets grow louder with traffic and commerce. Your small apartment faces a courtyard now instead of the street, its windows opening onto a well of shadow where laundry hangs and children play. The sounds of the boulevard reach you muffled and distant, the cry of vendors, the rattle of wheels, the laughter from cafe terraces. Privacy has become a luxury measured in meters from the street. A mason walks past with limestone dust coating his clothes and hands, his face marked by chips of stone from the day's work. He's one of thousands rebuilding Paris according to Haussmann's plans, his muscles shaped by lifting blocks that will outlast his grandchildren. The dust settles into the creases of his coat, marking him as a builder of the new city, even as his calloused hands speak of work that hasn't changed since the Romans laid their first stones. The concierge in your building rattles her keys like a jailer, each one opening doors to lives compressed into smaller and smaller spaces. She knows every tenant's business, who pays rent late, who receives mysterious visitors, who coughs too much in the night. Her keys unlock more than doors. They unlock the secrets of families learning to live closer together than comfort allows. A florist ties a string around bouquets with fingers that move from habit rather than thought. Her flowers come from greenhouses outside the city now, carried by train to markets that supply the boulevard's appetite for beauty. The strings she uses are thin but strong, designed to hold stems together through the journey, from shop to salon to vase. Each knot is the same, tied with the muscle memory of thousands of repetitions. Mirror glow multiplies the gaslight in shop windows, creating illusions of space and abundance. You catch your reflection fractured across multiple surfaces: the window of a milliner's shop, the polished brass of a cafe door, the glass front of a bookstore displaying novels by Balzac and Hugo. The mirrors make the boulevards feel larger than they are, more prosperous, more magical. They're part of Haussmann's theatre, turning shopping into spectacle. Cafe sugar dissolves in small cubes into coffee that's stronger and blacker than the chicory stretch brew of your childhood. The sugar comes from colonies you'll never see, refined in factories that turn raw cane into perfect white crystals. Each cube represents labour and distance compressed into sweetness. The empire's reach measured in teaspoons. Wet stone reflects the gas flames, creating double images that shimmer with each footstep. The new pavement is smoother than the old cobbles, easier on feet and wheels, designed for the increased traffic that flows along Haussmann's arteries. Water runs off it cleanly into gutters that carry waste away from the neighbourhoods where people live and work. Omnibus hooves strike stone in rhythm, the city's new heartbeat, as horse-drawn vehicles carry passengers along routes mapped with geometric precision. The omnibuses run on schedule now, their drivers wearing uniforms that mark them as servants of the city's efficiency. You hear them before you see them. The steady clip-clop that announces public transportation, available to anyone with the fare. Feuilleton ink stains your fingers as you read the latest instalment of a serialized novel, the story unfolding day by day in the newspaper's pages. The ink is still wet, rushed from press to street to catch readers hungry for entertainment. These stories shape the city's dreams as much as Haussmann's construction shapes its reality. Tales of romance and adventure that make narrow apartments feel less confining. The day's demolition and construction settles into your bones now. The crash of falling walls, the scrape of shovels on stone, the shouts of foremen directing crews. Your muscles hold the memory of a city transforming itself, tearing down centuries to build decades. You close your eyes and let the gaslight's steady glow replace the chaos of change, trusting that tomorrow's Paris will still have room for your small corner of rest. Industry will soon deepen these changes, and smoke from factory chimneys will reset the city's nightly breath once more. You step through the door of a narrow tenement as factory whistles echo across industrial Paris, their sharp voices marking the end of another 14-hour shift. Coal soot settles on windowsills faster than you can wipe it away, a fine black dust that seeps through every crack and crevice. The air tastes of metal and smoke, thick enough to chew. Long hours have become the rhythm of life here. Whistles mark when to wake, when to work, when to finally rest. Your cramped room holds the day's heat from bodies pressed too close together, the scent of unwashed wool and the sharp tang of industrial soap. You carry home baguette ends from the bakery where day-old bread sells for half price. The crusts are hard enough to chip teeth, but soaked in broth they soften into something that fills hungry stomachs. Your fingers work automatically, breaking the bread into pieces that will stretch further in soup. Each fragment represents calculation. How much nutrition can be squeezed from how little money, how many meals can be made from scraps others discard. The pot on your small stove holds leeks and bones, the foundation of tonight's supper. You've boiled these same bones 3 times already, each batch extracting less flavour but still providing the illusion of richness. The leeks were salvaged from market sweepings, their outer layers peeled away to reveal pale green hearts that will dissolve into the broth. Steam rises, carrying the scent of vegetables stretched thin, nourishment extracted from whatever the day's wages could afford. Your boots wait by the door, their leather cracked and resoled so many times the original shape has disappeared beneath layers of repair. You patch them by lamplight, needle, and thread, working through tough hide that must last another season. The work requires patience, each stitch pulled tight, each patch fitted carefully to cover holes worn by miles of walking on factory floors and cobblestone streets. Beds are shared by schedule in your building, bodies taking turns in narrow spaces that never grow cold. While you sleep, your neighbour works the night shift at the foundry. When you wake, he'll claim the mattress still warm from your body heat. The arrangement saves money neither of you has, creating intimacy with strangers born of necessity rather than choice. Privacy becomes a luxury measured in hours rather than rooms. Laundry hangs over stoves throughout the building, shirts and trousers draped on lines that crisscross small kitchens. The damp fabric steams in the heat, filling rooms with moisture that condenses on windows and walls. Your clothes carry the day's work in their fibres. Machine oil, coal dust, the salt of sweat earned through labour that bends backs and breaks spirits. The washing never ends because the dirt never stops coming. Coughs echo in stairwells like a percussion section, tuning up for a concert of suffering. The sound bounces off stone walls, multiplying until it's impossible to tell how many throats are raw, how many lungs are compromised by air that tastes of metal shavings and chemical residue. Children learn early that coughing brings worried looks from adults who've seen too many neighbours disappear into hospitals that rarely send patients home. A child sits at a wooden table, finishing letters by candlelight, pencil stub gripped in fingers stained with ink from the printing house where he works mornings before school. The letters are careful, each one formed with the concentration of someone who knows. Education might be the only escape from factory floors. His mother watches from the corner, mending clothes by the same flickering flame, both of them racing against the moment when the candle burns too low to continue. The carman rubs his wrists where leather reins have worn grooves in his skin, muscles cramped from controlling horses that pull loads through streets designed for lighter traffic. His hands tell the story of his days, calloused palms, swollen knuckles, fingers curved permanently around invisible reins. The work pays better than factory labour, but demands strength that fades with age, making every day a race against the calendar. A typesetter's fingers are permanently black with ink that no amount of scrubbing can remove. The stains mark him as clearly as a uniform, identifying his trade to anyone who looks at his hands. He works by feel as much as sight, fingers finding letters in cases arranged according to patterns learned through repetition. Each word he sets will be read by hundreds, but his own name appears nowhere in the books and newspapers he helps create. Lamp black coats everything in your room, a sooty residue from oil flames that burn through the night. You scrape it from walls and windowsills, but it returns faster than you can clean it. The black dust mingles with coal soot from outside, creating a patina that marks industrial neighbourhoods as clearly as street signs. Your lungs taste it with every breath, as your clothes carry it like a second skin. Boiled soap scents the building's common areas, harsh and chemical, designed to cut through grease and grime that gentler soaps can't touch. The smell burns your nostrils, but means cleanliness in a world where dirt accumulates faster than wages. Women scrub clothes in communal tubs, their hands red and raw from lye that strips skin as effectively as it strips stains. Newsprint smears on your fingers as you read by lamplight, the ink still wet from presses that run day and night to feed the city's appetite for information. The papers carry stories of strikes and accidents, political promises and industrial progress. The words blur together after 14 hours of close work, but you read anyway because knowledge feels like the only wealth that can't be stolen by rent collectors or factory owners. Tin mugs hold coffee stretched with chicory, the bitter brew that starts each day and ends each night. The metal conducts heat poorly, burning lips while leaving the coffee lukewarm, but tin doesn't break when dropped on factory floors or stone steps. Each mug has been dented and repaired, shaped by use into something uniquely suited to its owner's grip. Iron stair rails guide your climb to the 4th floor, their surface worn smooth by thousands of hands seeking balance on steps made treacherous by exhaustion and poor light. The metal is cold even in summer, drawing heat from palms that have spent the day gripping tools and machinery. Each rail bears the weight of workers ascending toward rest that will be too brief before the whistles call them down again. The day's industrial rhythm settles into your muscles now. The repetitive motions of machinery, the vibration of engines transmitted through factory floors, the heat of furnaces that never cool. Your body has learned to move in time with mechanical precision, but your mind rebels against the dehumanizing pace. You close your eyes and let exhaustion carry you towards sleep, knowing that tomorrow will bring the same whistles, the same soot, the same struggle to maintain dignity in work that treats humans like replaceable parts. Soon the lights will dim for war and trains will redraw the map of night across a city, learning new forms of darkness. You queue for bread in occupied Paris as dawn breaks grey and cold over a city that has learned to whisper. The line stretches around the corner, bodies pressed close in wool coats that smell of mothballs and fear. Occupation checks happen without warning. German soldiers appearing suddenly to examine papers, ration cards, the contents of shopping baskets that hold too little to feed families properly. Blackout cloth hangs heavy in every window, blocking light that might guide Allied bombers, but also sealing residents into darkness that feels thicker than night itself. Your ration card crackles between nervous fingers, its small squares marking meals that exist more in hope than reality. Each coupon represents a promise the city can barely keep. Bread that's more sawdust than wheat, meat that appears once a week if you're fortunate, sugar that's become precious as jewellery. You count the remaining squares like a miser counts coins, calculating which meals can be skipped, which children need food most desperately. the baker's scales tip with portions that grow smaller each month, his face apologetic as he weighs out grams instead of the pounds his grandfather once sold. Behind him, shelves that once groaned with pastries and fresh loaves now hold scattered remnants, dark bread that tastes of ersatz flour, rolls that crumble at the touch. He stamps your card with careful precision, each mark a small death of abundance that once defined Parisian tables. You trade coupons in whispered conversations that happen in doorways and market corners, exchanges that could mean imprisonment if discovered. A neighbour offers meat coupons for your tobacco ration. She doesn't smoke. You've given up eating much meat. The mathematics of survival has become a complex negotiation where trust costs more than the goods being traded. Every transaction carries risk, but hunger makes cowards of no one. The Métro rides carry you through tunnels that echo with different sounds now. Fewer footsteps, muffled conversations, the occasional German phrase that makes French passengers study their shoes with sudden intensity. Train cars are dimly lit to save electricity, their windows painted blue to comply with blackout regulations. You sit in shadows that hide faces but can't hide the tension that travels with every passenger. A note slips between pages of a book you're reading, passed from hand to hand through a network of resistance that operates in libraries and bookshops across the city. The paper is thin, the handwriting careful, the message coded in references to literature that occupying forces wouldn't recognize. You memorize the words quickly before tearing the paper into pieces small enough to scatter without a trace. Chicory fills your cup where coffee once brought morning comfort, its bitter taste a daily reminder of everything the war has taken. The ersatz liquid is hot and dark, but it lacks the richness that once made cafe conversations linger past their natural end. You drink it slowly, savouring warmth if not flavour, grateful for any ritual that connects today to the peaceful mornings you remember. Roots grow in pots on windowsills throughout the city, turnips and potatoes sprouting in containers that once held flowers. Your small garden consists of 3 clay pots, and you hope that soil scraped from bomb craters will nurture vegetables hardy enough to survive winter. The green shoots that emerge feel like victory against forces that would reduce Paris to rubble and despair. Windows are taped with strips of paper that create geometric patterns across glass, protection against bomb blasts that shatter more than panes. The tape yellows with age, curling at edges where moisture seeps through frames that haven't been properly sealed in years. Through these fractured views, you watch streets where German patrols walk with mechanical precision, their boots marking time that feels suspended between past and future. Coats are worn to bed on nights when fuel runs too low to heat rooms that seem to grow colder with each passing month. You layer wool over cotton over skin, creating insulation from materials that once served single purposes. Sleep comes fitfully when your body can't distinguish between mattress and street clothes, when comfort has been redefined as simply staying warm enough to wake. The concierge saves potato peelings in a jar, her weathered hands sorting scraps that might stretch into soup for families who've forgotten the taste of abundance. She knows which tenants have extra rations, which ones share generously, which ones hoard desperately. Her small acts of redistribution happen without fanfare. A handful of peelings left by a door, a cup of ersatz coffee shared on stairs too cold for conversation. A child traces a Star of David in dust on a windowsill, the six-pointed shape drawn by fingers too young to understand its dangerous meaning. An adult quickly erases the pattern, but not before you see the careful lines that speak of identity maintained despite laws that make existence itself illegal. The dust swirls and settles, erasing evidence but not memory. The baker counts ration tickets by candlelight after curfew, his ledger recording transactions that must balance against German quotas and French hunger. Each ticket represents a person, a family, a decision about who eats and who waits. His counting becomes a prayer of sorts, numbers that add up to survival for some, disappointment for others, always the terrible mathematics of not enough. Paraffin burns in makeshift lamps throughout the quarter, its oily smoke adding to the air, already thick with coal dust and anxiety. The smell clings to curtains and clothing, marking homes where people have learned to make light from whatever burns. Children do homework by these flickering flames, their pencils moving carefully across paper, too precious to waste on mistakes. Cabbage steam rises from pots where vegetables boil with scraps of fat saved from better days, the sharp scent mixing with paraffin smoke to create the perfume of wartime survival. You stir the pot slowly, coaxing flavour from ingredients that would have been scraps in peacetime, but now represent the foundation of family meals. The steam fogs windows already clouded with blackout paint. Bicycle tyres whisper against wet stone as riders navigate streets where gasoline has become impossible to find. Their silent passage marking a city that moves by muscle power and determination. The sound is softer than automobile engines, more human than mechanical, creating rhythms that match heartbeats rather than machinery. Boots echo on steps as neighbours climb to apartments that have become refugees from a world turned hostile. Each footfall marking another day survived in a city that endures by becoming smaller, quieter, more careful with every breath. You close your eyes and count the small victories that brought you through today. The bread obtained, the message passed, the warmth shared. Tomorrow will demand the same careful courage, but tonight you rest with the knowledge that Paris still breathes beneath the weight of occupation. Liberation's distant cheers will eventually return, and lights will slowly find their way back to tables where conversation remembers how to trust the darkness. You carry a warm baguette home through post-war Paris as neon signs flicker to life along boulevards rebuilt from rubble and hope. The bread is white again, soft again, real flour needed by bakers who no longer count ration tickets or weigh portions on scales that measured hunger. Your small apartment waits 5 flights up, its narrow balcony overlooking a courtyard where laundry hangs and children play games their parents taught them in bomb shelters. Rent comes due monthly now, paid in francs that hold steady value, though the cost of living climbs faster than wages for those who work late shifts in offices and factories that hum with peacetime production. The radio plays softly in your kitchen, voices mixing French with American jazz that drifts through open windows. You adjust the volume carefully, loud enough to hear the news from Algeria, soft enough not to disturb neighbours who share thin walls and thinner patience after years of enforced silence. The music carries rhythms that feel foreign but hopeful, notes that speak of possibilities beyond the careful survival that shaped the war years. Tourism has begun braiding itself through home life in ways that feel both welcome and intrusive. You pass groups of Americans on the stairs, their voices loud with enthusiasm as they climb toward rented rooms that cost more per night than you earn in a week. They carry cameras and guidebooks, seeking the Paris of their imagination while you navigate the Paris of your daily reality. Bills to pay, groceries to buy, work that starts early and ends late. Your balcony plants wait for evening water, their leaves dusty from exhaust that rises from streets filled with Citroëns and Renaults instead of German trucks. The geraniums and herbs grow in pots salvaged from bombed buildings, their roots finding life in soil mixed with brick dust and hope. You water them slowly, watching droplets catch the last light of day, creating small moments of beauty in a city learning to bloom again. The lift sighs between floors, its ancient mechanism protesting each journey with groans and shudders that echo through the building's narrow shaft. You listen to its mechanical complaints, counting floors by the rhythm of cables and pulleys that have carried residents up and down for decades. The sound becomes comforting after years of hearing it, proof that some things endure, that daily life continues despite the weight of history. Evening meals have shifted later to match the city's new prosperity. Where wartime supper meant thin soup at sunset, now you dine at 8 or 9 on steak frites when wages allow, lentil salad when they don't. The cafes serve food until midnight, their zinc bars polished to mirror brightness, reflecting bottles of wine that flow more freely than they have in a generation. The abundance still feels fragile, as if it might disappear with the next political crisis or economic downturn. Fans push summer heat through apartments that weren't designed for the electric appliances that now fill every room. Your small refrigerator hums constantly, its motor working to keep milk fresh and vegetables crisp in ways that would have seemed miraculous during the occupation. The fan blades turn lazily, stirring air that carries the scent of cooking from neighbouring apartments, garlic and herbs, roasting meat, the yeast of fresh bread. When cold returns, quilts are aired from balconies like flags of domestic comfort, their patterns faded, but their warmth intact. You shake dust from fabric that survived the war years, checking for moth holes and thin spots that need mending. The quilts smell of lavender sachets and cedar chests, of homes that endured by preserving what could be saved against uncertain times. A baker works through the night 3 floors below, his ovens glowing red at 3 in the morning as he shapes loaves for the day ahead. You hear him moving in the darkness, the scrape of peels against oven floors, the thud of dough on marble surfaces, the whistle he affects while working alone. His bread will be ready when the city wakes, crusty and golden, still warm when you buy your morning baguette. A student translates past midnight by lamplight that supplements the neon glow filtering through curtains, her dictionary thick with pages marked by years of use. She works on documents that arrive by mail from universities in London and New York, her careful French rendering academic English into language that speaks to continental minds. The work pays poorly, but offers a connection to ideas that transcend national boundaries. A nurse kicks off her clogs at the door after a 12-hour shift at the hospital, her feet swollen from walking corridors that echo with different sounds than they did during the war. Healing instead of dying, hope instead of despair. Her uniform carries the antiseptic scent of modern medicine, antibiotics, and anaesthesia that makes surgery routine rather than desperate. She soaks her feet in warm water while reading letters from patients who survived procedures that would have been impossible a decade earlier. The Métro chimes echo through tunnels that carry workers home from offices instead of factories. The sound marking a city that has shifted from manufacturing to services, from survival to something approaching prosperity. The familiar two-tone note announces stations where people board trains that run on time, their destinations mapped by choice rather than necessity. Scooter whines replace the rumble of military vehicles, Vespers and mobilettes carrying young people through streets where romance has replaced resistance as the primary occupation of evening hours. The high-pitched engines create a new urban symphony, lighter and more optimistic than the mechanical grinding that marked the war years. Espresso creamer floats on coffee that tastes of beans rather than chicory, the rich foam marking a return to pleasures that seemed lost forever. You sip slowly, savouring flavours that connect today to the peaceful mornings you barely remembered during the occupation. The coffee is strong and bitter and real, each cup a small celebration of abundance recovered. Rain drums on zinc roofs with the same rhythm it always has, but now the sound carries comfort rather than threat. You listen from your warm apartment, secure in the knowledge that morning will bring work rather than fear, that the city outside your window grows stronger rather than weaker with each passing season. The rain washes streets clean of the day's dust, preparing them for tomorrow's possibilities. Soon you'll step back to the river and measure what remained constant as all these lights changed around the ancient flow of water that has always been Paris's heartbeat. You step into contemporary Paris as LED streetlights flicker on with digital precision, their cold blue glow replacing the warm yellow of gas lamps that once marked evening's arrival. Rising costs have pushed families into smaller spaces where rent consumes half of monthly wages, forcing choices between heating and eating that would have been familiar to your great-grandparents. Short-term stays have become the norm. Airbnb apartments cycling through tourists while locals search for permanent homes they can afford. Service shifts define the new economy, night workers cleaning offices and delivering food, while day workers sleep in beds that never grow cold. Your phone glows where oil lamps once flickered, its screen casting blue light across features that would have been lit by candle flame in centuries past. You scroll through messages that connect you to friends scattered across the city and the world, your thumb moving in patterns that would puzzle a medieval scribe but serve the same purpose. Communication across distance, words that bridge solitude. The device holds more knowledge than any university library your ancestors could have imagined, yet somehow the night still feels uncertain, still requires the same small acts of preparation that have always marked evening's approach. Text messages replace the whispered good nights, once shared across narrow streets. Your words travelling instantly through networks that span continents. You type carefully, choosing words that carry warmth across digital distances, sending love through fibre optic cables to children studying abroad, to parents aging in distant suburbs, to friends whose lives have scattered like seeds on urban winds. The messages arrive with soft chimes that punctuate the night's silence, electronic bells that mark connection rather than curfew. Take-out boxes fold into neat squares on your small table, their cardboard surfaces printed with phone numbers and websites that promise delivery within 30 minutes. The food inside carries flavours from Vietnam, Morocco, India, cuisines that reflect a city grown global in ways that would astound the merchants who once counted exotic spices as treasures You eat with plastic utensils that will outlast the meal by centuries. Convenience purchased at environmental costs that future generations will calculate. Your laptop streams a film while you eat, its screen displaying stories filmed in languages you don't speak, but understand through subtitles that appear and disappear like digital ghosts. The entertainment arrives through cables and wireless signals, travelling from servers in distant cities to your small apartment, where artificial light makes night feel optional. The film's characters face problems that feel both timeless and entirely modern. Love complicated by technology, families separated by economics, and dreams deferred by circumstances beyond individual control. Windows are checked with the same caution your ancestors showed, though now you test electronic locks and security systems instead of wooden bars and iron latches. The glass is double-paned for insulation, sealed against noise and weather, creating barriers between inside and outside that medieval families could never have imagined. Yet the gesture remains identical, the human need to secure space against uncertainty, to create boundaries between private life and the unpredictable world beyond. Keys turn in locks that are both more and less secure than their predecessors. Electronic systems that can be bypassed by hackers, but resist the simple force that might have broken medieval barriers. You check the door twice, a ritual that connects you to every generation that has sought safety in the simple act of securing their threshold against whatever darkness might hold. Rest must be learned through noise now rather than silence. Your sleep is shaped by the constant hum of traffic, air conditioning, and electronic devices that never fully power down. The city's soundtrack has changed. Car engines instead of horse hooves, air brakes instead of wooden wheels, the distant whine of aircraft instead of church bells. You adapt by creating artificial, quiet, noise-cancelling headphones that block the urban symphony your ears have learned to filter. Earbuds hush the block's constant chatter, creating personal soundscapes that isolate you from neighbours whose lives unfold inches away behind thin walls. The technology allows privacy in crowded spaces, solitude in the midst of millions, silence purchased through devices that would have seemed magical to earlier generations. Yet the isolation they create sometimes feels more complete than any medieval hermit's cell. Bread waits for morning coffee, in patterns that echo ancient rhythms, the baguette resting on your counter like an offering to tomorrow's hunger. The bread is still made from real flour, water and yeast, still shaped by human hands, and still carries the scent that has marked Parisian mornings for centuries. Some traditions prove stronger than technological change, some hungers too fundamental to digitize. A delivery rider warms his hands at 2 a.m, breath visible in LED-lit air as he checks his phone for the next order. His motorcycle idles outside all-night restaurants that serve a city that never sleeps, its appetite fed by workers who navigate streets their grandparents knew by different lights. The rider's gloves are fingerless to operate touchscreens, modern tools adapted to ancient needs, warmth, work, the simple requirement of earning enough to survive until dawn. The baker's red, even light glows in the shop below your apartment, its warmth visible through windows that frame scenes unchanged in their essence despite their modern setting. Flour still transforms into bread through processes that predate electricity, though digital timers now mark the ancient rhythms of rising and baking. The light promises morning sustenance, with the same certainty that has comforted Parisians for 1,000 years. A nurse checks messages before sleep, her phone displaying updates from patients whose care continues beyond hospital walls. Her uniform is synthetic fabric that wicks moisture and resists stains, a technology applied to the timeless work of healing. The messages she reads speak of recovery and concern, human needs that no app can fully address, but digital tools can help coordinate. LED washes the street in light that never flickers, never dims, never requires the lamplighter's careful attention that once marked evening's progression. The illumination is constant and reliable, banishing shadows that once hid both danger and romance. Yet something is lost in the perfection, the human scale of flame, the intimate glow that made night feel like a companion rather than an obstacle to overcome. The elevator hums between floors with mechanical precision, its motors regulated by computers that calculate load and destination with mathematical accuracy. You listen to its familiar sounds, finding comfort in the reliability that technology provides, even as you miss the human voices that once called out floor numbers and opening doors. Late drizzle strikes glass that has been treated to shed water more efficiently than any medieval glazing, droplets forming patterns that blur the LED lights into abstract art. The rain sounds different against modern materials, sharper against metal, softer against treated glass, creating urban percussion that marks the same seasonal rhythms that have always governed the city's breath. Now you must return to the Seine and listen for what never left. You set bread aside for tomorrow, as you have for 1,000 years of Parisian nights. Your hands fold a cloth with the same care that medieval fingers once pressed linen over hidden loaves. The Seine moves past your window with the same whisper it carried to Roman ears, to Saxon families pressed against timber walls, to revolutionaries counting coins by candlelight. Rest has always been earned through the day's small labours, food counted, doors checked, small acts of care repeated across centuries, like prayers spoken in different tongues but carrying identical hope. You listen to water and wind on bridges that have been wood, then stone, then steel, but always spanning the same dark flow that connects every age. The routines echo along stone worn smooth by countless footsteps. A lamplighter's careful flame lives on in the streetlight's automatic click. A mother's hush still gentles children towards sleep, though lullabies now compete with traffic instead of church bells. A baker's knot, tied with the same twist of wrist that shaped bread before kings learned to read, secures tomorrow's sustenance against tonight's uncertainty. Watch becomes lamp, becomes bulb, becomes screen, but the need for light against darkness never changes. Seine scent rises through every transformation, peat smoke to coal dust to exhaust fumes. Yet underneath flows the eternal smell of water moving toward the sea. You stand again at the Seine's edge as night settles over the city. The water moves with the same whisper it carried past Roman coins and medieval grain sacks, past revolutionary papers and ration cards. 1,000 years of Parisian nights flow in this current, each one earned through the day's small labours, each one guarded by the same careful rituals. The sounds have changed. Church bells gave way to factory whistles, then to the hum of traffic and the soft chime of phones. Yet underneath the river's voice remains constant, carrying the city's breath from wooden huts to glass towers. The light has changed too. Oil flames became gas jets, then electric bulbs, then LED streams. But the need for light against darkness never varies, nor the comfort of securing doors, of counting what remains, of pressing close to those we love. You feel the weight of all these nights in your own evening routine. The bread you set aside echoes the medieval baker's careful hoarding. The door you check twice carries the memory of revolutionary fear and wartime caution. The quiet you seek connects you to students bent over parchment, to families huddled in Métro stations, to every generation that found peace in small acts of preparation. Paris endured not through grand gestures, but through these nightly rhythms, the folding of cloth over tomorrow's bread, the trimming of wicks, the gentle settling of children into sleep. Each night was a bridge between one day and the next, built from the same materials across centuries: care, vigilance, hope, and the simple faith that morning would come. The Seine knows all of this. It has carried the city through plague and revolution, through occupation and liberation, through the endless cycle of change that touches everything except the human need for rest. Tonight, as you prepare for your own sleep, you join this ancient current. Your breath becomes part of the river's song, your rest another note in the long melody of survival. The water moves toward the sea, carrying Paris forward as it always has, not through the grand designs of emperors or architects, but through the accumulated weight of ordinary nights, ordinary people, ordinary acts of love performed in the dark. This is how cities truly endure, and how you will too. Close your eyes now. Let the river's whisper carry you into the same gentle current that has held Paris safe for 1,000 years. Tomorrow will ask for the same small courages, the same quiet care. But tonight belongs to rest earned through the day's work and sweetened by the knowledge that you are part of something larger, a story that began long before you and will continue long after, flowing like water toward the sea. If these quiet journeys through history bring you comfort, you're welcome to join us each week for more gentle nights like this one. Rest well and let the river carry you safely toward dawn.